The sound of my wife's laughter echoed through the thin walls of our Portland duplex. But it wasn't meant for me. I stood in the kitchen at 11:47 p.m., still wearing my sanitation department uniform, staring at the empty beer bottles scattered across our dining table like evidence of a crime I hadn't committed yet. 3 voices, all male, all familiar. "Come on, Sarah. Show us what you showed Danny last week," one of them slurred. That was Jake Morrison, my childhood friend from Roosevelt High, the same Jake who'd been my best man 4 years ago. My hands trembled as I set down my keys, the metal barely making a sound against the wooden counter. Through the crack in the living room door, I could see shadows moving against the wall, shapes that told a story I'd been trying not to read for months. Mike won't be back until morning. Sarah's voice carried that sultry tone she used to reserve for me. He's too busy playing with garbage trucks to notice what's happening in his own house. The 3 of them erupted in laughter. Rick Stevens, my former workout partner. Tommy Chen, who'd borrowed $2,000 from me last Christmas. And Jake, the one who promised to look after Sarah when I worked double shifts. I pressed my back against the kitchen wall, every muscle in my body coiled tight. 4 years of marriage, 14 years of friendship, all of it dissolving in the space between heartbeats. "You sure he's not coming back?" That was Rick's voice. Lower now. Hungry. "Trust me," Sarah said. "Mike's predictable. He'll work until 6, grab coffee at that pathetic diner, then drag himself home to shower and pretend he's still relevant. We have hours." Something shattered inside my chest. Not my heart, but something deeper. The part of me that had believed in loyalty, in the sanctity of vows, in the idea that good people existed in this world. I moved toward the stairs, each step calculated to avoid the creaking floorboard third from the top. In our bedroom, I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app. Not to record, that would be illegal without consent, but to document the time, the date, the beer bottles downstairs, the cars parked outside. Evidence has a way of accumulating when you know where to look. From my nightstand drawer, I retrieved the small notebook I'd been using to track our finances. Instead, I began writing names, times, dates, every suspicious late night, every unexplained expense, every lie that had seemed harmless at the time. The laughter from downstairs grew louder, more brazen. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. I walked to our closet and pulled down the old Army surplus bag from the top shelf. Inside, wrapped in a towel that still smelled like my father's cologne, were his boxing gloves. Cracked leather, worn padding, but still functional. Beneath him, a photo of him in his prime. Not as a professional fighter, but as a man who understood that sometimes the world demands you stand up for yourself. Never hit back until it counts, Michael. He told me the day before he died. But when it counts, make sure they remember why they shouldn't have tested you. I tucked the photo into my wallet, slung the bag over my shoulder, and descended the stairs. The voices from the living room had grown quieter, more intimate. I didn't need to see what was happening to understand the full scope of my betrayal. At the front door, I paused. The old me would have confronted them, would have demanded explanations, apologies, promises to change. The old me would have given them the chance to gaslight me into believing this was somehow my fault. But the old me had died somewhere between the kitchen and the bedroom, suffocated by the weight of unwelcome truth. I stepped into the Portland night, rain beginning to mist across the sidewalk. Behind me, the duplex glowed with warm light, hosting a party I'd never been invited to. 3 cars in the driveway. Jake's silver BMW, Rick's lifted truck, Tommy's red Honda. I memorized each license plate, then walked to my beat-up Corolla and drove away, without looking back. The Riverside Boxing Gym had been closed for 6 months. But old habits die hard. I still had the key from my volunteer days, back when I'd helped train kids from the neighborhood. The owner, Pete Antonelli, had moved to Arizona for his health, leaving the building to slowly decay while the city decided what to do with it. I let myself in through the back door, breathing in the familiar scent of leather and sweat, and dreams deferred. The heavy bags still hung from their chains, ghostly sentinels in the darkness. I flipped on the single working light above the center ring. This place had been my sanctuary once. Every Tuesday and Thursday for 2 years, I'd come here after my shifts to teach 12-year-olds how to throw a proper jab, how to protect themselves, how to channel anger into something productive. Now, it would serve a different purpose. I set the army bag on the floor and pulled out my father's gloves. They fit perfectly, as they always had. In the cracked mirror across the room, I saw myself as I truly was. Not the pushover husband who'd ignored warning signs, not the loyal friend who'd been too trusting, but something harder, something that had been sleeping for too long. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Working late again? You're missing a great party?" Jake and the guys stopped by. I stared at the me sage for a long moment, then typed back, "Enjoy yourself. I'll be home around 6 a.m. Her response came quickly. "Love you, babe. Don't work too hard." The hypocrisy was almost impressive. I turned off the phone and slipped it into my pocket. Tomorrow, I would begin the careful work of dismantling their lives. Not with violence. I was too quick, too easy, too likely to land me in prison. Instead, I would do what I'd learned from 4 years of municipal work, identify the weak points in the system, apply pressure at precisely the right moments, and watch the whole structure collapse under its own weight. But first, I needed to remember how to fight. I spent the next 3 hours working the heavy bag, my father's gloves connecting with the leather in steady, methodical combinations. Left jab, right cross, left hook. The rhythm of violence, precise and unforgiving. With each punch, I felt myself changing, hardening, becoming something my betrayers wouldn't recognize. By the time I left the gym, my knuckles were raw and my shoulders burned, but my mind was crystal clear. I drove home as the sun painted the Portland skyline in shades of pink and gold, arriving just as Sarah was probably saying goodbye to her guests. The house was quiet when I entered. The living room cleaned of all evidence. Beer bottles gone, cushions fluffed, the scent of air freshener, trying to mask more intimate odors. Sarah had always been thorough in her deceptions. I found her in bed wearing the silk nightgown I'd bought her for our anniversary. She smiled sleepily as I entered the room. "How was work?" she asked, stretching like a cat. "Productive?" I replied, beginning to undress. "Very productive." She watched me with lazy eyes, probably cataloging any signs of suspicion. But I'd learned to school my features to present the same tired, predictable Mike she'd grown comfortable betraying. "Jake and the guys stopped by," she said, testing the waters. "We had a few drinks, watched a movie. Hope that's okay." "Of course," I said, hanging up my uniform. "They're always welcome here." The lie came easily now, smooth as silk. I climbed into bed beside her, kissed her forehead, and whispered good night. Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing deep and regular. I lay awake until dawn, planning. The next morning, I called in sick to work. The first time I'd used a sick day in 3 years. While Sarah showered, I went through her phone, memorizing names, numbers, social media accounts. I photographed her text conversations, her Instagram DMs, her calendar entries. Knowledge is power, but applied knowledge is devastation. My first stop was the Portland State University Library, where I spent 4 hours researching Oregon divorce law, property rights, and social media privacy regulations. I learned about revenge porn statutes, cyberbullying laws, and the fine line between justice and harassment. Everything I planned would be legal, if not entirely ethical. My second stop was Kinko's, where I printed copies of everything I'd photographed. Bank statements, credit card bills, mortgage documents, all the paperwork of our shared life. I also printed screenshots of Sarah's social media activity, her dating app profiles, apparently she'd never deleted them, and her work emails that she'd foolishly synced to her personal device. The paper trail of betrayal was surprisingly extensive. My third stop was the most important. A consultation with Martha Hendress, a divorce attorney with a reputation for thoroughness. She was a sharp woman in her 50s, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. "I need to understand my options," I told her, sliding a manila folder across her desk. "My wife is having an affair, multiple affairs actually, with my closest friends." Martha opened the folder and began reviewing the contents. After 20 minutes, she looked up with something resembling respect. "You've been busy," she said. "This is quite comprehensive." "I work in municipal waste management," I replied. "I understand the importance of documentation." She almost smiled. "Indeed. Now, Oregon is a no-fault divorce state, which means adultery doesn't affect the division of assets. However, there are some interesting elements here." She tapped one of the bank statements. "These charges to adult entertainment websites made from your joint account without your knowledge. That could be considered financial infidelity." "I had no idea about those charges," I said truthfully. "And this," she indicated a printed email, "shows your wife discussing the sale of jewelry that was gifted to her by your deceased mother. That's a separate property issue." I hadn't known about the jewelry either. Sarah had told me she'd lost my mother's pearl necklace during a move. "What are my options?" I asked. Martha leaned back in her chair. "We can file for divorce immediately, seek spousal support based on your income disparity, and request that she be responsible for the debt she incurred without your knowledge. The house will likely be split 50-50. But if we can prove she's been using marital assets to fund her affairs—" "I don't want alimony," I interrupted. "I want her to understand what she's lost." Martha studied me carefully. "Mr. Patterson, I have to ask, are you planning anything I should know about? Anything that might compromise your position in divorce proceedings?" "I'm a sanitation worker, Mrs. Hicks. I believe in cleaning up messes methodically and completely." This time, she did smile. "We'll start with the paperwork. But Michael, may I call you Michael? Be careful. Angry spouses sometimes make decisions they regret." "I'm not angry," I said, standing to leave. "I'm motivated." That evening, I began phase 1 of my plan. I arrived home at my usual time, greeted Sarah with my usual kiss, and asked about her day with my usual disinterested tone. She told me about her work at the marketing agency, her lunch with girlfriends, her plans for the weekend. All lies, but delivered with the confidence of someone who'd never been caught. "I'm thinking of taking up boxing again," I mentioned casually over dinner. Sarah looked up from her salad. "Boxing? Why?" "I've been feeling out of shape. Thought I might join a gym, get back in fighting trim." "That's great, honey," she said. But her attention was already drifting to her phone. "Whatever makes you happy." After dinner, I helped with dishes, watched TV beside her on the couch, and went to bed at 10:30. The picture of Dome Stick normally. But at 1 a.m., I slipped out of bed and returned to the Riverside Boxing Gym. Over the next 2 weeks, I established a routine. Days were spent at work, evenings at home playing the oblivious husband, and nights at the gym honing my body and my plan with equal intensity. I also began reaching out to Jake, Rick, and Tommy individually. Nothing suspicious, just casual texts, invitations to grab a beer, suggestions that we needed to hang out more often. I was careful never to mention Sarah, never to seem overly interested in their activities. Jake was the first to take the bait. We met at Murphy's Pub on a Thursday night, sitting at the bar like old times. He was nervous, checking his phone constantly, avoiding eye contact. "You seem distracted," I observed after his third beer. "Just work stuff," he replied. "You know how it is." "Actually, I don't." "What exactly do you do again?" I asked, though I knew perfectly well. Jake sold insurance poorly and lived mostly off his trust fund. "Sales," he said vaguely. "Hey, how's Sarah?" Haven't seen her in a while. The lie came so easily for him, so naturally. "She's good. Busy with work. You should come by for dinner sometime." Jake's face went pale. "Yeah, maybe. I should probably get going." "One more," I suggested, signaling the bartender. "I really can't, Mike." "Early morning." But I'd already ordered 2 shots of whiskey. "Come on, for old time's sake." He drank reluctantly, then excused himself to the bathroom. While he was gone, I took out my phone and accessed his Instagram account, which I'd been monitoring since the night of discovery. His location services were turned on, and I could see he'd been at my house 3 times in the past week. When he returned, I was scrolling through sports highlights on my phone. The picture of casual friendship. "You know," I said as we prepared to leave, "I've been thinking about that time in high school when you stood up to Brad Kowalski for me. Remember? He was giving me grief about my dad's drinking and you just laid him out with 1 punch." Jake's expression softened slightly. "Yeah, I remember. I never thanked you properly for that," I continued. "You were always there when I needed you. A real friend." The guilt was written all over his face. "Mike, I no need to say anything," I interrupted. "I just want you to know I appreciate it. Loyalty means everything to me." He left the bar looking like he'd swallowed glass. Rick was next. I approached him at the gym where he worked as a personal trainer, suggesting we grab lunch. He was more confident than Jake, more arrogant, but also more careless. "I've been meaning to call you," he said over sandwiches. "I haven't seen you around much." "Working a lot of overtime," I replied, trying to save up for Sarah's birthday. "Want to get her something special?" "That's sweet, man. She's lucky to have you." The hypocrisy was staggering. I smiled and nodded. "What about you? Still single?" "You know me." Rick grinned. "Playing the field, keeping my options open." "Anyone special?" "Maybe," he said with a wink. "But I don't kiss and tell." I laughed like we were sharing a joke. Good policy. Sarah always says I'm too trusting, that I should be more suspicious of people's motives. Rick shifted uncomfortably. "Sarah's smart. You should listen to her." "I'm starting to," I said. Over the next week, I had similar encounters with Tommy, each conversation carefully calibrated to plant seeds of paranoia and guilt. I wanted them off balance, questioning whether I knew something, but not certain enough to confess or flee. Meanwhile, I continued my nocturnal training at the gym, pushing my body to remember skills I'd learned in my 20s. I wasn't trying to become a professional fighter. I was simply preparing for a confrontation I knew was inevitable. The breakthrough came on a Wednesday night. I'd been monitoring Sarah's phone remotely using software I'd installed during one of her showers. The technology was legally questionable, but I wasn't planning to use anything I found in court. At 11:15 p.m., she received a text from Jake. Mike's acting weird. I think he might know something. Her response, relax. Mike's clueless, always has been. Jake, I don't know. Sarah. He keeps bringing up loyalty and friendship. It's like he's trying to tell me something. Sarah, stop being paranoid. Even if he suspected something, what would he do? File for divorce? I get half of everything plus alimony. He makes 3 times what I do. Jake, what if he gets violent? Sarah, Mike, please. He's never thrown a punch in his life. Besides, Rick could snap him in half. Jake, this is getting too risky. Maybe we should cool it for a while. Sarah, if you're getting cold feet, I'm sure Rick and Tommy won't mind having me all to themselves. Jake, that's not what I meant. Sarah, then stop worrying. Tomorrow night, same time. Mike's working a double shift. I stared at the screen, feeling something cold and final settle in my chest. Not anger, I was beyond anger now. This was calculation, pure and simple. The next morning, I called my supervisor and arranged to leave work early, citing a family emergency. I spent the afternoon at the gym, working my combinations with a precision that would have made my father proud. Then I went home to wait. Sarah left the house at 8:00 p.m., claiming she was going to book club. I watched from the bedroom window as Jake's BMW pulled into the driveway 15 minutes later, followed by Rick's truck and Tommy's Honda. I gave them an hour to get comfortable, then drove to the gym and called Jake's cell phone. Mike. His voice was thick with alcohol and guilt. What's up, man? I need to talk to you. I said, all of you. It's important now. It's kinda late and I know where you are, Jake. I know what you're doing. I know about all of it. The silence stretched between us like a wire under tension. Mike, I can explain. Riverside Boxing Gym, I interrupted. 20 minutes. Come alone or I start making phone calls to wives, employers, and social media followers. Mike, let's talk about this. 20 minutes, Jake. Don't make me come get you. I hung up and waited. Jake arrived first, his face pale and sweaty despite the cool Portland evening. He found me in the center ring wearing my father's gloves and a plain black t-shirt. Mike, listen. I can't explain everything. Save it, I said, not looking up from the hand wraps I was adjusting. We'll talk when the others get here. The others? Rick and Tommy. They're part of this conversation, too. Jake pulled out his phone, probably texting them. I didn't care. I'd planned for every contingency. Rick arrived 10 minutes later, swaggering through the door like he owned the place. He was bigger than me, more muscular. But muscle wasn't everything in a fight. My father had taught me that. Well, Rick said, looking around the empty gym. This is dramatic. What's the plan here, Mike? You're going to challenge us to a duel? Something like that, I replied. Tommy was the last to arrive, nervous and twitchy. He kept checking his phone, probably hoping Sarah would text him an escape route. Okay, I said, finally looking up at them. We're all here. Let's talk. Mike, before you say anything, Jake began. Shut up. The words came out harder than I had intended, but they had the desired effect. Jake's mouth snapped closed. I know, I continued, about the parties at my house. I know about the group texts. I know about the betting pool on how long it would take me to figure it out. Rick shifted his weight, hands clenching into fists. You don't know crap, Mike. I know Sarah's been ducking all 3 of you for 6 months. I know you've been using my home, my bed, My trust to have your little orgies while I work double shifts to pay for the life she's destroying. The admission hung in the air, like smoke from a fire. I know, I continued, that you've been laughing about it. Calling me pathetic, clueless, weak, making jokes about how I'm too stupid to see what's happening in my own marriage. Tommy finally found his voice. Mike, it's not like that. It's exactly like that, I said. But here's what you don't know. You don't know that I've been documenting everything, every text, every photo, every financial transaction. You don't know that I've already filed for divorce, that my attorney has copies of everything, that Sarah's going to lose half of everything she thought she was entitled to. Jake's face went white. You can't prove anything. I can prove you borrowed $2,000 from me last Christmas and spent it on a weekend trip to Vegas with my wife. I can prove Rick's been using our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms. I can prove Tommy's been selling steroids to teenagers at the community center where he volunteers. That last part was a bluff. But Tommy's guilty expression told me I'd guessed correctly. But most importantly, I said, stepping closer to the edge of the ring, I can prove that you're all about to learn what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. Rick laughed, but it sounded forced. What are you going to do, Mike? Beat us all up? You're not that guy. You're right, I said. I'm not that guy. But I'm not the guy you knew either. I climbed out of the ring and walked to the center of the gym floor. The three of them formed a loose semicircle around me, uncertain, but trying to project confidence. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to leave Portland, all of you. You're going to find new jobs, new apartments, new lives somewhere else. You're going to disappear from my world completely. Or what? Rick challenged, stepping forward. Or I'll make sure everyone in this city knows exactly what kind of men you are. Your families, your employers, your future girlfriends. I'll make sure the story follows you wherever you go. You can't do that, Jake protested. That's harassment, is it? Or is it just sharing factual information about people's character? I guess we'll find out. Rick had heard enough. He lunged forward, throwing a wild haymaker that would have connected if I hadn't spent the past month preparing for exactly this moment. I slipped the punch, grabbed his extended arm, and used his momentum to throw him into the wall. He hit hard, shoulder first, and dropped to one knee. Rick. Tommy started toward his friend, but I held up a hand. Stay where you are, I said calmly. Unless you want to be next. Rick struggled to his feet, clutching his shoulder. You son of a witch. I'm not done talking, I said. But if you want to finish this conversation with your fists, I'm ready. Jake tried to be the peacemaker. Mike, let's all just calm down. I am calm, I replied, calmer than I've been in months. See, I spent a lot of time thinking about how to handle this situation. I considered violence, public humiliation, legal action. But then I realized something. You're not worth the effort. I walked over to a folding chair and sat down, still wearing my father's gloves. The truth is, you've already lost, I continued. You just don't know it yet. Sarah's about to lose her job. Turns out her boss doesn't appreciate employees who use company computers for personal dating profiles. She's about to lose her home, her savings, her social circle. And when she starts looking for someone to blame, who do you think she'll choose? The three of them exchanged glances. You think she'll stand by you when the money runs out? When the house is sold? When she's facing the reality of starting over at 35 with nothing but a reputation for adultery? I shook my head. Sarah's a predator. She used you just like she used me. The difference is, I'm getting out before she destroys me completely." "That's not true," Tommy said. But his voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? When's the last time any of you had a real conversation with her? When's the last time she asked about your dreams, your fears, your hopes for the future? Or does she just show up when she wants something?" The silence was answer enough. "She's already planning her exit strategy," I continued. "She's got dating profiles active on 3 different apps. She's been corresponding with her ex-boyfriend in Seattle. She's been researching apartments in California." More silence. "But here's the beautiful part," I said, standing up. "She doesn't know." "I know. She's still playing the loving wife, still pretending she's committed to our marriage. She has no idea that the divorce papers are already filed, that the bank accounts are already separated, that the credit cards are already canceled." I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. "You want to know what real revenge looks like? It's not violence. It's not public humiliation. It's simply removing yourself from the equation and watching everything collapse without you." I headed for the exit, and then stopped one more time. "Oh, and gentlemen, Sarah tested positive for chlamydia last week. Might want to get yourselves checked." The lie came easily, smoothly, with just enough detail to be believable. But judging from their faces, it might not have been a lie at all. I left them there in the gym, 3 men who learned too late that actions have consequences, that betrayal carries a price, and that some people are much more dangerous when they're quiet than when they're loud. The next morning, I found Sarah in the kitchen making coffee, with the cheerful efficiency of someone who thought she was still in control of her life. "Morning, honey," she said, kissing my cheek. "Sleep well?" "Very well," I replied, pouring myself a cup. I had the most interesting conversation last night. Something flickered in her eyes. "Oh, about what?" "Work stuff. Boring municipal politics." She relaxed slightly. "I'm glad you're finally making friends at the office. You've been so isolated lately." The irony was almost painful. "Speaking of friends, I haven't seen Jake and the guys around much lately. Everything okay with them?" "I have no idea," she said. But her tone was too casual, too prepared. "You know how men are. They get busy with their own lives." I nodded sympathetically. "Well, if you see them, tell them I said hi." "Of course." We finished breakfast in companionable silence. 2 people sharing a meal and absolutely nothing else. Then I kissed her goodbye, told her I loved her, and went to work. At lunch, I called Martha Hendress. "How are you feeling, Michael?" she asked. "Liberated," I replied. "When do we serve the papers?" "Monday morning. I'll have a process server waiting at her office and the financial arrangements all in place. The joint accounts are frozen, the credit cards are canceled, and I've filed for an emergency hearing on spousal support. Given the evidence of financial infidelity, I'm optimistic." "What about the house?" "She can buy out your half or we'll force a sale. Either way, you'll be compensated fairly." I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. "Thank you, Martha, for everything. Just doing my job. But Michael, be careful this weekend. Sometimes people get desperate when they realize they're trapped." Her warning proved prophetic. Saturday morning, I woke to find Sarah already gone. No note, no explanation. Just an empty space in the bed where my wife used to sleep. Her car was gone, her purse missing, but her clothes were still in the closet. I made coffee and waited. She returned at 10 a.m., eyes red-rimmed and smelling like cigarettes. Sarah had quit smoking 3 years ago, supposedly. "Where were you?" I asked. Not because I cared, but because the old Mike would have asked. "Driving," she said. thinking about what us, our marriage, the future. I sat down my coffee cup and really looked at her for the first time in months. She was still beautiful, still possessed of that sharp intelligence that had attracted me in college. But there was something hollow about her now, something desperate. "And what did you conclude?" I asked. "That we need to talk, really talk about what we want, what we need, what we're willing to fight for." The word fight hung in the air between us like a challenge. "I'm listening," I said. Sarah sat down across from me, her hands folded on the table like she was conducting a business meeting. "I know things haven't been perfect between us," she began. "I know we've grown apart, that we've stopped communicating the way we used to." I remained silent, letting her dig her own grave. "But I also know that what we have is worth saving. 4 years of marriage, all those dreams we shared, all the plans we made." Her voice was getting stronger, more confident. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this work. Whatever it takes, counseling, therapy, whatever you think might help. I love you, Mike. I love our life together. I don't want to lose that." The performance was flawless, delivered with just the right amount of vulnerability and determination. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed her. "That's interesting," I said, "because I had a very different conversation with some mutual friends last night." The color drained from her face. "What friends?" "Jake, Rick, and Tommy. They had some fascinating insights about our marriage." Sarah's composure cracked slightly. "I don't know what they told you, but they told me the truth," I said quietly. Finally, we stared at each other across the kitchen table, the pretense falling away like a discarded mask. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me. 3 weeks since the night you had your little party while I was working." Sarah closed her eyes, absorbing the implications. "What are you going to do?" "I've already done it. The divorce papers will be served on Monday. The accounts are frozen. The credit cards are canceled. The house will be sold and we'll split the proceeds according to what each of us contributed to the down payment." "You can't do that." "I already have." She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "This is insane, Mike. One mistake, one moment of weakness, and you're ready to throw away everything we've built. One mistake, Sarah. You've been ducking my 3 best friends for 6 months. You've been using our home, our bed, our money to finance your affairs. You've been laughing about it, making jokes about how stupid I am. I never said you were stupid. No, you just said I was clueless, that I'd never thrown a punch in my life, that Rick could snap me in half if I ever found out." The specific details hit her like physical blows. She turned from the window, her expression shifting from denial to calculation. "You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself. This is illegal. You can't just monitor someone's phone without their consent. You're right. Good thing I won't be using any of that information in court." She stared at me, trying to process the implications. Then how? Bank records, credit card statements, social media posts, hotel receipts, all perfectly legal, all perfectly damning. Sarah slumped back into her chair, the fight going out of her. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. I want you to leave. This is my home too. Not anymore. I've consulted with an attorney. Given the circumstances, I can request exclusive use of the marital residence pending the divorce proceedings. You're really going to do this? Destroy everything we've built over a few indiscretions?" "I'm not destroying anything, Sarah." "You already did that?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she looked up, Her eyes were hard. You know what your problem is, Mike? You're weak. You always have been. You work your little job, come home to your little house, live your little life, and you think that's enough. But it's not. It's boring. It's suffocating. It's death by 1,000 small compromises. So, you decided to cheat. I decided to live. To feel something real. Something passionate. Something that reminded me I was still alive. With my friends, with men who weren't afraid to take what they wanted. Men who didn't ask permission to exist. The words were designed to hurt, to make me doubt myself, to convince me that I was the problem. A month ago, they might have worked. You're right, I said, standing up. I was weak. I was too trusting, too passive, too willing to believe that people were better than they actually are. Mike. But I'm not that person anymore, and the man I am now. He's not going to be manipulated, gaslit, or intimidated into accepting scraps from someone who never deserved him in the first place. Sarah's mask slipped completely. You self-righteous, you think you're so much better than everyone else, don't you? You think your little moral superiority gives you the right to judge me? I think my faithfulness gives me the right to expect the same from my wife. Faithfulness. She laughed bitterly. You were faithful to a ghost, Mike. To some idea of what marriage should be, not to who I actually am. And who are you, Sarah? Really? I'm someone who refuses to settle for mediocrity. Someone who demands more from life than grocery shopping and Netflix binges and conversations about mortgage payments. You're someone who destroys everything good in her life because she's too selfish to appreciate what she has. The words hung between us like a blade. Sarah's face twisted with rage. Get out! She hissed. This is my house too, remember? Get out! She was screaming now, all pretense of control abandoned. I walked calmly to the front door, pausing only to grab my keys. I'll be back for my things tomorrow, I said. I suggest you use the time to figure out where you're going to be living. I spent Saturday night at a motel near the airport, lying on scratchy sheets and staring at the ceiling. Every few hours, my phone would buzz with texts from Sarah, alternating between apologies, threats, and desperate attempts at reconciliation. I'm sorry. I was angry. We can work this out. You're making a huge mistake. You'll regret this. I love you. Please come home. I'll take you for everything you're worth. The guys were right about you. You're pathetic. I turned off the phone and tried to sleep. Sunday morning brought a knock at my motel room door. I opened it to find Jake Morrison standing in the hallway looking like he hadn't slept in days. We need to talk, he said. I let him in, curious to see what he wanted. He sat heavily in the room's single chair, running his hands through his hair. Sarah called me last night, he began. She's falling apart, Mike, completely losing it. That's not my problem anymore. She says you're taking everything, the house, the savings, everything. I'm taking what I'm entitled to. Jake looked up at me with bloodshot eyes. What about what we're entitled to? Rick and Tommy and me. We had something good with her, something real. The audacity was breathtaking. You had an affair with my wife. We had a relationship, multiple relationships. Sarah's not property, Mike. She's a person with her own desires, her own needs. Needs that apparently included humiliating her husband and betraying his trust. It was never about you, Jake insisted. It was about her, about what she wanted, what made her happy. And what she wanted was to duck my 3 best friends while I paid the bills. Jake flinched at the crew desk, but pressed on. Look, I know how this looks. I know we handled it badly. But Sarah's in love with us, all of us. And we love her too. Then marry her, support her, build a life with her. Just do it without my house, my money, or my involvement. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Jake stood up, pacing to the window. She's pregnant, Mike. The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat down hard on the bed, trying to process what he just said. Pregnant. 8 weeks. She just found out yesterday. Whose is it? We don't know. Could be any of ours. Could be yours. The possibility hadn't occurred to me. Sarah and I had been trying to have children for 2 years without success. Her doctor had suggested fertility treatments, but we'd been waiting for our insurance to improve. She wants to keep it, Jake continued. But she needs stability, financial security, the kind of life you could provide. You want me to raise another man's child. You want a family. Sarah wants a family. This could be your chance. I stared at him, marveling at the depths of his delusion. You think I'm going to take her back after everything? I think you're going to do what's right for the baby, if not for her. What's right is getting as far away from this situation as possible. Jake's expression hardened. That baby might be yours. Then we'll figure that out with DNA tests after it's born. Until then, Sarah's pregnancy is her responsibility and yours. Mike, get out, Jake, and don't contact me again. He left without another word, taking with him any lingering doubts about the path I'd chosen. Monday morning arrived with the precision of inevitability. I returned to work for the first time in a week, throwing myself into the familiar rhythms of municipal waste management. There was something soothing about the work, loading trucks, optimizing routes, solving logistical problems that had clear solutions. At 10:15 a.m., Martha Hriss called. It's done, she said. The papers have been served. Your wife seemed surprised. How surprised? She fainted. Had to be revived by her colleagues. Quite the scene, apparently. And the restraining order in place. She can't contact you directly, can't come to your workplace, can't access any of the joint accounts. What about the house? She has 30 days to arrange financing for a buyout, or we proceed with a forced sale. Given her current employment situation, I doubt she'll qualify for a mortgage large enough to buy out your half-employment situation. She was terminated this morning. Apparently, her supervisor became aware of some personal activities that reflected poorly on the company's image. I felt a flicker of satisfaction, quickly suppressed. How did they find out? Anonymous tip. Someone sent them screenshots of her dating profiles, along with some rather explicit messages she'd exchanged with clients. Sarah had always been careless with her digital footprint, too confident in her ability to compartmentalize her life. I wondered if she'd finally realized that actions have consequences. The next few days passed in a strange kind of peace. I worked, I trained at the gym, I looked at apartments in different neighborhoods. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Then Tommy called. Mike, we need to meet. It's about Sarah. I don't want to hear about Sarah. She's in the hospital. That stopped me cold. What happened? Self-destruction attempt. Pills and alcohol. Jake found her this morning. The words hit me like ice water. Whatever Sarah had done, whatever she destroyed, I'd never wanted this. Is she? She's alive, stable. But Mike, she's asking for you. I can't see her. There's a restraining order. The doctors say she might try again if she doesn't get closure. They're asking family members to come in. I'm not family anymore. You're still her husband until the divorce is final. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility I'd thought I'd shed. Which hospital? OSU, 5th floor. The drive to the hospital felt like traveling through water. Everything distorted and strange. I'd spent the past week learning to think of Sarah as an adversary, a problem to be solved. The idea that she might actually be broken, might actually be suffering, complicated everything. I found her in a private room looking small and pale against the white sheets. Her wrists were bandaged, and there was a tube running from her arm to an IV bag. She was awake, staring at the ceiling with empty eyes. "Hello, Sarah." She turned her head slowly, as if the movement required tremendous effort. "You came?" "Tommy said you asked for me. I wanted to see you one more time to explain." I sat in the plastic chair beside her bed, maintaining a careful distance. "Explain what? Why I did it?" "All of it. Sarah, please let me say this." I nodded, settling back to listen. "I was dying," she said quietly. "In our marriage, in our life. I was dying by degrees. Every day, the same routine, the same conversations, the same predictable future stretching out ahead of us. I felt like I was suffocating. So, you had an affair." "I had affairs because I needed to feel alive again, to feel desired, wanted, chosen, not just accepted out of habit or obligation. I chose you every day for 4 years. You chose the idea of me, the wife, the future mother, the woman who would complete your vision of domestic happiness. But you never saw me. The real me." I wanted to argue, to defend myself. But there was something in her voice that stopped me. A raw honesty I hadn't heard in years. "What did you want me to see?" I asked. "Someone who needed more than you were willing to give. Someone who wanted passion, excitement, unpredictability. Someone who was slowly disappearing under the weight of your expectations. My expectations were that you'd be faithful. Your expectations were that I'd be grateful. Grateful for the house, the stability, the respectability. Grateful enough to pretend that was all I needed." The conversation was veering into dangerous territory. The kind of emotional manipulation that had characterized our marriage. But something was different now. Sarah wasn't trying to win an argument. She was trying to be understood. "The pregnancy," I said. "Is it real?" "Yes." "Whose is it?" "I don't know. Honestly, I don't know." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know that either. Everything's gone, Mike. My job, my home, my future. The guys are scared. Talking about leaving town. I have nothing left. You have choices." "Do I?" "I'm 35 years old, unemployed, pregnant with a child whose father I can't identify, and facing a divorce that's going to leave me with nothing. What choices do I have?" The self-pity was real, but so was the desperation underneath it. For the first time since this began, I felt something approaching sympathy for her. "You can start over," I said. "People do it every day." "With what?" "I have no savings, no references, no family who will speak to me. I burned every bridge, destroyed every relationship, alienated everyone who ever cared about me. That was your choice too." "Yes," she said, tears finally coming. "It was. And I have to live with the consequences. But Mike, I need you to know I never meant to hurt you. Not really, I needed something you couldn't give me." "What couldn't I give you?" "Permission to be selfish. Permission to want more than I deserved. Permission to destroy something good because I was too broken to appreciate it. The admission hung between us like a bridge neither of us knew how to cross. I'm sorry, she whispered, for all of it. For the lying, the cheating, the humiliation. For making you feel like you weren't enough when the truth is I was never enough for you. Sarah, you deserved better. You deserved someone who could see the value in what you were offering, instead of someone who only saw what was missing. I sat there for a long moment processing words I'd needed to hear but hadn't expected. An apology that felt real. Acknowledgement that felt genuine. Responsibility that felt complete. What happens now? I asked. Now I try to figure out how to live with what I've done. How to build something from nothing. How to be a mother when I can barely take care of myself. And the divorce. I won't contest it. You can have whatever you want. I don't have the energy to fight anymore. I stood up suddenly exhausted. Take care of yourself, Sarah. And take care of the baby. Mike, I turned back at the door. I did love you. Maybe not the way you needed to be loved, but I did love you. I know, I said. I loved you too. And then I walked away, carrying the weight of 4 years and the lightness of freedom in equal measure. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Sarah moved to Seattle to live with her sister, taking with her a small settlement that would help her start over. The pregnancy proceeded normally, and DNA tests revealed that the father was Tommy, who immediately fled to Colorado and cut off all contact. Jake and Rick both left Portland within weeks of Sarah's self-destruction attempt. Jake moved back in with his parents in San Diego. Rick relocated to Phoenix, where he found work at a fitness franchise. Neither of them ever contacted me again. I kept the house along with most of our shared assets. The judge was unsympathetic to Sarah's claims, particularly after reviewing the evidence of financial infidelity and emotional abandonment. 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Martha Hendress at a coffee shop downtown. "How are you adjusting?" she asked, joining me at my table. "Better than expected," I replied honestly. "It's quiet, but good quiet. Any regrets?" I considered the question carefully. "About the divorce?" "No." "About how I handled it? Sometimes second thoughts about the revenge angle?" "Not revenge, justice. There's a difference." Martha smiled. "Is there? Or is that just what we tell ourselves to feel better about our choices?" "Maybe both," I admitted. "But I sleep well at night. And I wake up every morning knowing I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "And where's that?" "Free." A year later, I received a birth announcement in the mail. Sarah had delivered a healthy baby girl, Emma Grace. The father was listed as unknown, and Sarah had kept her maiden name. There was a brief note included. "Mike, I wanted you to know that Emma is healthy and happy. I'm working as a barista and taking night classes in accounting. It's not much, but it's honest work, and I'm learning to appreciate what I have instead of mourning what I don't. Thank you for forcing me to confront who I really was. I hope someday I'll be worthy of the forgiveness I don't deserve." Cy kept the note for a few days, then threw it away. Some chapters need to end completely before new ones can begin. 2 years after the divorce, I met Rebecca at a community garden where I'd started volunteering. She was a kindergarten teacher, recently widowed with a 5-year-old son named David. We started as friends, became lovers, and eventually something deeper. She knew about my first marriage, about the betrayal and the revenge and the bitter aftermath. She never judged me for it, never tried to fix what wasn't broken. "You're not that angry man anymore," she told me one evening as we watched David play in our backyard. "How can you tell?" "Because angry men don't plant tomatoes. They don't read bedtime stories. They don't build tree houses. Maybe I'm just better at hiding it." "Maybe," she said, kissing my cheek. "But I don't think so." 3 years after the divorce, Rebecca and I were married in a small ceremony at the community garden where we'd met. David walked her down the aisle, proud to be gaining a stepfather who taught him how to throw a proper punch and how to grow vegetables with equal enthusiasm. I never heard from Sarah again. Never saw Jake or Rick or Tommy. They became footnotes in a story I'd finished writing, characters in a book I'd closed and put away. Sometimes late at night, I'd think about the choices that had led me to that moment in the boxing gym, surrounded by the ruins of friendship and marriage. I'd wonder if there had been another way, a kinder path, a solution that didn't require such complete destruction. But then I'd look at Rebecca sleeping beside me, at David's drawings on the refrigerator, at the life I'd built from the ashes of the old one. And I'd know the truth. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to let everything else burn. Some people are worth fighting for. Others are worth walking away from. The wisdom is in knowing the difference. And sometimes when the people you trusted most prove themselves unworthy of that trust, the kindest thing you can do for them and for yourself is to remove yourself from their lives so completely that they're forced to confront who they really are, without you there to enable their worst impulses. I learned that love without respect is just dependency, that loyalty without reciprocity is just exploitation, that forgiveness without consequences is just permission to be hurt again. I learned that revenge isn't about causing pain. It's about refusing to absorb it anymore. And I learned that the strongest thing a man can do isn't to fight for a relationship that's already dead, but to walk away from it with enough dignity intact to build something better. The old Mike would have stayed, would have tried to fix what couldn't be repaired, would have accepted blame for failures that weren't his to own. The new Mike understood that some battles are won by refusing to fight them. On our wedding night, Rebecca asked me if I ever missed my old life. "Which part?" I replied. "The certainty, the routine, the feeling that you knew who you were and where you belonged." I thought about it for a moment and then shook my head. I never knew who I was back then. I knew who I thought I was supposed to be. There's a difference. And now I know exactly who I am. I'm a man who doesn't settle for less than he deserves. I'm a man who keeps his promises and expects others to keep theirs. I'm a man who plants gardens and raises children and builds things that last. And if someone tries to destroy what you've built, I smiled, thinking of my father's gloves still hanging in the closet of our new home. Then they'll learn the same lesson Sarah and her friends learned, that some people are much more dangerous when they're quiet than when they're loud. Rebecca laughed, curling up against my chest. "Remind me never to cross you." "You won't," I said, kissing the top of her head. "You're not that kind of person." "How do you know?" "Because you're here, really here, not looking for something better, not keeping one foot out the door, not treating this as a stepping stone to something else. You're all in. What if I change? What if I become someone different? Then we'll deal with it together." "But Rebecca, I'm not afraid of that happening." "Why not?" "Because you've already seen me at my worst and you chose to stay. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." She was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "I love you, Mike Patterson. I love you too." And for the first time in my adult life, I knew those words were completely, absolutely true. 5 years after the divorce, I received one final communication from my past, not from Sarah, but from Jake Morrison. It was a letter handwritten on expensive stationery, postmarked from San Diego. "Mike," it began, "I know I have no right to contact you after everything that happened. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I understand if you throw this letter away without reading it. But I needed to say some things, and I needed to know that I'd tried to make amends, even if you can't accept them. I've spent the last 5 years trying to understand what happened to us. How 3 men who'd been friends since childhood could do what we did to someone we claimed to care about. How I could betray the trust of someone who'd never given me reason to doubt his friendship. The easy answer is that we were selfish. That we thought with our Johnsons instead of our brains. That we got caught up in something that felt exciting and forgot about the consequences. But the real answer is more complicated than that. We were threatened by you, Mike. By your stability, your integrity, your ability to build a life based on something more substantial than immediate gratification. We told ourselves that you were boring, that Sarah deserved better, that we were doing her a favor by giving her excitement you couldn't provide. But the truth is, we were envious. You had something real, something lasting, something we didn't have the maturity or the character to build for ourselves. So instead of rising to your level, we dragged you down to ours. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness. I know that's not something I deserve, and it's not something you're obligated to give. I'm writing because I wanted you to know that what happened changed me. Not immediately. I spent the first year feeling sorry for myself, blaming you for being too harsh, blaming Sarah for getting us involved in the first place. But eventually, I had to confront the truth about who I'd become. And I didn't like what I saw. I've been in therapy for 3 years now. I've made amends to my family, my co-workers, the people I hurt with my selfishness and dishonesty. I've learned to take responsibility for my actions without making excuses or shifting blame. I want you to know that Sarah is doing well. She remarried last year, a good man who knows about her past and loves her anyway. Emma is healthy and happy, and Sarah has become the kind of mother and wife she should have been all along. She found her way back to being a decent person, just like I'm trying to do. I also want you to know that I heard about your remarriage, about your stepson, about the life you've built. I'm happy for you, Mike. Genuinely happy. You deserved better than what we gave you, and I'm glad you found it. I don't expect a response to this letter. I don't expect forgiveness or friendship or anything else from you. I just wanted you to know that your decision to walk away from us the way you handled everything taught me something important about consequences and character. You could have destroyed us completely, but you chose to destroy only the parts of us that deserved it. You gave us the chance to become better people, even if it took us years to realize it. I hope you're happy, Mike. I hope your new family brings you all the joy and peace you never found with us. Your former friend, Jake. I read the letter twice, then showed it to Rebecca. Are you going to respond? She asked. I don't think so. What would be the point? Closure? Forgiveness? Moving on? I moved on 5 years ago. This is about his need for closure, not mine. But you kept the letter for now. I might throw it away tomorrow, or I might keep it forever. I haven't decided yet. Rebecca nodded, understanding that some decisions don't need to be made immediately. Do you believe him about Sarah, about changing? About being sorry? I think he believes what he's saying. Whether it's true or not doesn't really matter anymore because you don't care. Because I care about other things more. That evening, I took David to his Little League game and watched him strike out twice and field a grounder that won the game for his team. Rebecca cheered from the stands, 8 months pregnant with our first child together. After the game, we went for ice cream and talked about school, about summer vacation plans, about whether the baby would be a boy or a girl, normal family conversation about normal family things. The kind of life I'd always wanted but had never known how to build till I learned to walk away from the things that were destroying it. Later that night, after David was asleep and Rebecca was reading in bed, I went out to the garage and found my father's boxing gloves. I held them for a moment, remembering the man who taught me when to fight and when to walk away. Then I put them back in their box and returned to the house, to my wife, to my life, to the future I'd chosen over the past I'd survived. Some stories end with violence. Others end with justice. The best ones end with peace. This is one of those.